Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The message arrived buried in noise. Not dramatic, not glowing, not accompanied by alarms or cinematic revelation. It came as a statistical anomaly, one irregular pattern among millions of meaningless signals bouncing through Earth's orbital clutter. Elena Varga almost ignored it. She was 26, underfunded, and 3 months behind on her research grant. Her workstation hummed in the corner of a dim lab at the University of Bucharest, surrounded by empty coffee cups and half-finished code. Her project wasn't glamorous. She analyzed signal drift from decaying satellites, looking for patterns that might improve long-range communication models. Most nights, she filtered out garbage. This looked like garbage, until it didn't. At 3:17 a.m., her algorithm flagged a repeating structure, too clean to be random, too complex to be artificial noise. Elena frowned, leaned closer, and reran the analysis. The signal repeated every 11.3 seconds. Not exactly. Almost. Each cycle carried slight variations, like a heartbeat trying to disguise itself as static. She isolated the pattern, stripped away interference, and fed it into a translation model. Nothing. She tried another approach, frequency mapping. Still nothing. Great, she muttered. Alien spam. But something about it bothered her. Not the signal itself, but the structure. It wasn't trying to communicate outward. It was routed, as if it had been sent from one point to another, and Earth had simply been in the way. That realization made her sit up. Wait. She pulled up orbital relay paths, cross-referenced satellite positions, and reconstructed the signal's trajectory. It hadn't originated anywhere near Earth. It had passed through, bounced, distorted, weakened, but still intact enough to detect. A message in transit, not meant for human eyes. Elena's pulse quickened. She wrote a quick parser, abandoning linguistic assumptions entirely. Instead of trying to understand what it said, she analyzed how it was organized. Segments, clusters, repeating blocks with slight numerical shifts. It wasn't language. It was data. And data had structure. Hours blurred. Code rewrote itself under her hands. She stopped thinking about coffee, about sleep, about consequences. By 5:02 a.m., the first pattern emerged. A grid, rows and columns. Entries that changed in predictable increments. Her screen filled with symbols she couldn't read, but she could interpret their relationships. This is a table, she whispered. No, not a table. A tally. Her stomach dropped. Each row appeared to represent an entity. Distinct, consistent across repetitions. Each column shifted in a binary-like state. Yes. No. Abstain. Elena stared at the screen, her mouth dry. This isn't possible. She zoomed in on one particular row, the one that had changed most dramatically between cycles. Its identifier was complex, but it repeated with slight variations, as if referencing a location, coordinates. Her fingers trembled as she converted them. Not Earth coordinates. Stellar ones. She cross-referenced with a star catalog. The match came back instantly. Solar system. Earth. Her chair creaked as she leaned back, suddenly aware of how quiet the lab was. The hum of machines felt too loud, too present. No, no, no. She went back to the data, desperate to prove herself wrong. She recalculated, reparsed, rebuilt the model from scratch. Same result, over and over. A list of systems, a series of votes, and one entry, Earth, surrounded by overwhelming consensus. She forced herself to decode the simplest layer, the binary column. The result translated cleanly. Reject. Her breath caught. Reject what? She dug deeper. The clusters weren't just votes. They were paired with descriptive tags. Not words, exactly, but compressed semantic markers. Her software struggled, then adapted, approximating meaning through relational context. The translation wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Unstable. Expansion risk. Conflict-prone. Preemptive isolation advised. Elena felt cold. Not afraid. Not yet. Just hollow. They're talking about us. The final segment of the signal was the clearest of all. It repeated across every cycle, unchanged, emphasized. A conclusion, a decision. Her program rendered it slowly, character by character, like it understood the weight of what it was saying. Resolution pass. Her hands hovered above the keyboard. Frozen. No. She scrolled further, heart pounding. There was one more line. Short, definitive, implementation imminent. The sun rose outside without her noticing. By 7:12 a.m., she had contacted her supervisor. By 7:40, the university's network flagged her data transfer as anomalous. By 8:05, government systems intercepted the signal. At 8:32, men in plain clothes entered the lab. Elena didn't resist when they asked her to step away from the computer. "Where did you get this?" one of them asked. "I didn't," she said, her voice distant. "It passed through us." They exchanged looks. "Do you understand what it means?" Elena swallowed. "Yes." "Explain it." She hesitated, just for a second, because saying it out loud made it real. "They voted," she said finally, "not about us, about what to do with us." And her eyes flicked to the screen, where the final line still glowed. Implementation imminent. "They decided we're a problem," she whispered, "and they've already agreed on the solution." The man frowned. "Which is?" Elena met his eyes. "Exile." The world didn't end when the news broke. It fractured. At first, only a handful of people knew. Intelligence agencies, high-level officials, a few scientists pulled into emergency briefings. They sat in secure rooms, staring at projections and translations, arguing over margins of error, like that might save them. It could be a misinterpretation. It's not. It could be a test signal. From who? Silence followed that question every time, because there was no answer humanity could comprehend. By noon, the information had spread beyond containment. Not leaked, released. No government wanted to be the one caught hiding something like this. Not when satellites, independent observatories, and private networks were already picking up fragments of the same signal Elena had found. By evening, the entire planet knew. There were no riots. Not immediately. What followed was stranger, a kind of global stillness, as if humanity, collectively, had paused to process something too large for panic. Then came the reactions. Some people laughed it off. Aliens voted us out? Sure. What's next, Finds? Others collapsed into fear. They're coming. That's what implementation means. Religious groups split. Some calling it judgment, others calling it deception. Markets crashed within hours, then stabilized just as quickly when governments froze them outright. Airports filled, not with people fleeing, but with people trying to go home. Because somewhere deep down, everyone understood the same thing. Whatever was coming, it was bigger than borders. In a secure underground chamber beneath Geneva, representatives from nearly every nation gathered for the first truly global emergency summit in human history. No flags, no press, no speeches, just urgency. A projection filled the center of the room, the decoded signal, rotating slowly in three-dimensional space. Rows of votes, the line that mattered, resolution passed, implementation imminent. "We need to define imminent," one delegate said. "We can't," another replied. "We don't know their scale of time." "Then we assume worst case." "And what is worst case?" Someone snapped. "A fleet arrives tomorrow? A weapon? A quarantine field? We don't even know what exile means." Voices rose. Arguments spiraled. For a moment, it looked exactly like every other international meeting in history. Then Elena spoke. She hadn't expected to be there. 12 hours ago, she'd been in a dim lab, arguing with code. Now she stood in a room filled with the most powerful people on Earth, all waiting for clarity she wasn't sure she could give. "They weren't debating," she said quietly. The room didn't immediately respond, but the volume dropped. "They weren't arguing. The signal shows that. The vote was procedural." "What does that mean?" someone asked. "It means the decision wasn't sudden," Elena said. "They already knew what they were going to do. The vote was a formality." A murmur spread. "So this has been planned," a general said. "Yes." "For how long?" She hesitated. "I don't know, but long enough that they didn't need to discuss it. That landed harder than anything else, because it meant humanity hadn't just been judged. It had been observed, studied, measured, and found wanting. The first proposal came from a military coalition. We prepare defenses, the commander said. Planetary shields, orbital weapons, anything we can deploy quickly. Against what? Another delegate challenged. You've seen the scale of that signal. Whatever Senate operates across star systems. So we do nothing, we don't provoke them. That word, provoke, shifted the room. Are we assuming hostility? A diplomat asked. They've labeled us a threat, the commander replied. That is hostility. Elena shook her head. No, she said. Everyone turned to her again. They didn't say eliminate. They said isolate. That's not better. It might be, she said. If they wanted us gone, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Silence, because that was true. If something powerful enough to coordinate across a galaxy wanted Earth destroyed, there wouldn't be a vote. There would be absence. The second proposal was quieter, more dangerous. We leave. It came from a scientist in the far corner of the room, someone who hadn't spoken until now. Heads turned. Explain, a delegate said. If exile means isolation, the scientist continued, then staying here puts us at risk of enforcement. We don't know what form that takes. But if we remove ourselves... You're suggesting evacuation? Someone interrupted. I'm suggesting survival. A bitter laugh echoed. You want to move 8 billion people off planet? With what ships? We don't need to move everyone, the scientist said. We need to ensure humanity continues. The room erupted again. That's not a solution. That's abandonment. It's adaptation. It's surrender. It's strategy. Elena watched the argument unfold, her mind racing. The idea sounded impossible, until it didn't, because every other option depended on understanding an enemy they couldn't even see. Leaving didn't. Leaving was something humanity understood very well. It had done it for thousands of years, across oceans, across continents, into space itself. This would just be farther. The turning point came from an unexpected place. A live feed appeared on the central projection. Unauthorized, briefly resisted, then allowed. A private aerospace leader, not a politician, not military, an engineer. We've been preparing for deep space expansion for decades, she said. Not like this, but the foundation exists. Modular shipyards, autonomous construction systems, prototype drives. Prototypes, someone emphasized, not operational. They can be. In what time frame? She didn't hesitate. Days to initiate, weeks to launch. That was impossible. Everyone in the room knew it, but she kept talking. If every nation redirects resources immediately, we can scale faster than anything we've ever attempted. Not perfectly, not safely, but enough. Enough for what? A delegate asked. Enough to leave before imminent happens. The room went quiet again. Not because they believed her, because they wanted to. The vote that followed wasn't unanimous. It couldn't be. Some nations refused. Some leaders called it madness. Others called it humanity's only chance. But unlike the signal that had started all of this, humanity's decision wasn't procedural. It was desperate, and it passed. Within hours, the world transformed. Factories shut down and reopened under new directives. Civilian industries were repurposed overnight. Supply chains collapsed, then reformed into something unrecognizable. Steel became hull plating. Satellites became scaffolding. Launch facilities operated without pause. Orbit filled with construction frameworks. Massive, skeletal structures growing faster than engineers could fully understand them. Project Exodus had begun. There were no guarantees, no full designs, no time for testing. Only one shared understanding. If the galaxy had decided humanity didn't belong, then humanity would decide where it did. No one slept the night before launch. Not because of fear, though there was plenty of that, but because the world no longer followed anything resembling a normal rhythm. Time had been compressed into urgency. Days blurred into decisions. Nights into construction. And then, suddenly, There was nothing left to build, only to leave. The first ships weren't beautiful. They weren't meant to be. From orbit, they looked like unfinished thoughts. Vast frames of metal and composite. Sections mismatched. Surfaces patched with whatever materials had been available in time. Some rotated slowly, stabilizing systems never designed for such scale. Others pulsed with unstable energy signatures. Experimental drives humming like restrained storms. But they were ready, or as ready as they would ever be. On the surface, the departures began quietly. No global announcement marked the moment. No unified countdown. Instead, across continents, spaceports opened in synchronized silence. Massive transport carriers lifted from runways and launch pads, carrying the chosen, the willing, and the necessary. Families stood together, until they didn't. "I'll find you," a mother whispered, pressing her forehead to her son's. "You don't know where you're going," he said. "I don't need to," she replied. "Just stay alive long enough for me to catch up." Elsewhere, a man handed his daughter a small metal object, a key to a house that would soon be empty. "So you remember," he said. She nodded, even though she knew memory wouldn't be the problem. Letting go would. Not everyone left. That was the truth no one could soften. Some refused, unwilling to abandon the only world they had ever known. Some couldn't, too far from launch sites, too late in selection waves, too lost in the chaos of a planet reorganizing itself in days. And some chose to stay for reasons that didn't need explanation. Hospitals continued operating. Cities didn't shut down, they dimmed. Lights flickered across Earth as power grids redirected energy upward, feeding orbital construction and launch systems. Entire regions went dark so that engines in the sky could burn brighter. From space, it looked like the planet was slowly fading. In orbit, the fleet assembled, not in formation, not in unity. In proximity, thousands of vessels drifted beyond the atmosphere, clustering around Earth and the Moon like a second artificial constellation. Each ship broadcast identification signals, some standardized, many improvised, forming a chaotic network of communication that barely held together. Voices overlapped, coordinates conflicted, systems failed, rebooted, adapted, drive calibration at 60%. No, wait, 58. Life support stable. Repeat, stable. We're missing 200 passengers. Hold launch. We can't hold. There is no hold. Above it all, a single channel emerged, not official, not assigned, but accepted. A coordination frequency. Humanity, improvising itself into survival. At 4:12 Universal Time coordinated, the first wave initiated burn. Engines ignited, not with the clean precision of decades-old rockets, but with raw, overwhelming force. Some flare blue-white. Others burned in unstable spectrums that sensors struggled to classify. Ships surged forward, not gracefully, but decisively. They cleared Earth's orbit in uneven arcs, accelerating toward pre-calculated exit vectors. Paths designed not for efficiency, but for dispersion. The goal wasn't to travel together. It was to not be stopped together. Beyond Mars, the fleet stretched thin. By Jupiter, it had become something else entirely, a scattering of trajectories, each ship adjusting course based on evolving data, emerging failures, and new calculations transmitted in real time. And then, at the edge of the known system, something changed. It started as a distortion, not visible, not at first, but measurable. Instruments began reporting gravitational anomalies where none should exist. Sensor arrays flickered with inconsistent readings, as the space itself had become uncertain. "Do you see that?" a pilot asked. "See what?" "That." He pointed at a display that refused to stabilize. "That shouldn't." The stars shifted, not dramatically, just enough, and then they appeared. The watchers didn't arrive. They revealed themselves. Massive structures unfolded from nothing, geometric forms that defied immediate comprehension. Not ships in the human sense. Not vessels with clear direction or function. They were positions, objects placed with intent. They surrounded the outer boundary of the solar system, not densely, not aggressively, but precisely, each one occupying a point that, together, formed a barrier, not a wall, a statement, Panic rippled through the fleet. Unknown contacts, multiple. No, not multiple, count undefined. They're not moving. They don't need to move. Are they targeting us? No weapons lock, no signals, nothing. Then what are they doing? The answer came from someone who hadn't meant to speak on the open channel. They're waiting. At the front of the scattered fleet, one of the largest vessels, unfinished, heavily modified, barely stable, slowed its acceleration. Others followed, not because they were told to, because instinct spread faster than orders. Humanity had reached the edge, and the edge was occupied. Minutes passed. No one fired. No one advanced. The watchers remained still, silent monoliths at the threshold of escape. Then, from the lead vessel, a transmission began. No encryption, no translation layers, just raw signal, broadcast across every frequency humanity could access. "This is a civilian Exodus fleet of Earth," the voice said. Calm, steady, human. No response. The captain continued. "You have issued a decision regarding our species. We have received it. Still nothing. You have labeled us a risk." A pause. Then, "We agree." That caused a ripple of confusion across the fleet. What is he doing? Is this surrender? "No, listen. You voted to isolate us," the captain said, "to remove us from your systems, your networks, your domain. The structures ahead remain motionless. We accept your decision." A longer pause now, as if even the silence had weight. But exile requires distance. The engines of the lead ship flared slightly, just enough to illuminate its scarred, unfinished hull. "We are leaving." For a moment, nothing happened. No response. No movement. The watchers held their positions, vast and indifferent. And then, a gap, not opened, not created, simply unblocked. One of the structures shifted, just slightly, altering its position in a way that broke the perfect geometric alignment. It wasn't an invitation, but it wasn't refusal. The hesitation lasted less than a second. Then the fleet surged forward. Experimental drives activated across hundreds of ships simultaneously. They weren't designed for synchronization. They weren't designed for safety. They were designed in a rush, built in desperation, and deployed without full understanding. Space reacted accordingly. It bent, not smoothly, not predictably. Localized distortions rippled outward as vessels engaged drives that folded distance in uneven, violent ways. Some ships vanished cleanly, disappearing into controlled jumps. Others flickered, half present for a fraction of a second too long. A few didn't make it. Their signals cut off mid-transmission, leaving silence where voices had been. No one had time to mourn. The fleet didn't pass through the boundary as one. It shattered through it. Each ship chose its own vector in the final moment, algorithms scrambling to avoid overlap, to minimize collision risk, to maximize survival odds. Humanity didn't leave as a single civilization. It left as fragments, thousands of trajectories, thousands of futures. Behind them, the solar system grew quiet. The watchers returned to stillness, their brief adjustment undone. The gap closed, not sealed, but restored to its original precision. Earth remained, blue, silent, alone, on the surface. Those who stayed watched the sky empty. No more launches. No more streaks of fire climbing into orbit. Just stars. The same stars that had always been there. Only now they felt farther away, far beyond the edge of the system. In directions no unified map could follow, the last transmissions from the Exodus fleet scattered into the dark. Some were coordinated. Most were not. One message, repeated across dozens of ships before signals diverged completely, carried a simple instruction: survive, adapt, do not regroup unless necessary. There would be no central command, no single destination, no shared path. Humanity had not escaped together. It had escaped everywhere. And for the first time in its history, it was truly alone. At first, nothing changed. The Galactic Coalition recorded the outcome of the vote, archived the Earth designation under isolated systems, and moved on. It had done this before. Not often, but enough. Civilizations deemed volatile were quietly removed from shared networks. Their systems marked and avoided, trade routes adjusted, communication channels rerouted. Over time, those worlds faded into irrelevance. That was the expectation. Earth would go silent. Humanity would stagnate. Time would solve the problem. For nearly a century, that assumption held. No signals came from the Sol system. No vessels entered coalition space from its direction. Observatories reported nothing unusual, just a quiet star with a quarantined world orbiting it. The decision appeared correct. Then came the first anomaly. A trade convoy operating along the outer corridors of coalition space reported an unidentified vessel drifting near a relay checkpoint. It wasn't broadcasting identification, which was unusual, but not unheard of. What was unusual was its design. The convoy's sensors struggled to classify it. It wasn't following any known structural logic. Segments of the hull appeared mismatched. Materials from different technological standards fused together. Energy readings fluctuated unpredictably, as if multiple power systems were competing rather than cooperating. Derelict, one observer suggested, or primitive, another said, pre-standardization. A retrieval team approached. They never filed a complete report. Only fragments of their transmission made it back through the relay. Vessel is not abandoned. Crew responsive multiple languages. Translation failing. They don't recognize. Wait, what do you mean, which authority? They are requesting trade. The transmission cut. By the time a secondary team arrived, the unidentified vessel was gone. The incident was logged, flagged, then buried beneath more immediate concerns. Because one anomaly was not a pattern, but patterns began to form. A mining colony reported unauthorized extraction activity in a restricted asteroid belt. A scientific outpost detected a signal using no known encoding protocol, yet clearly structured, clearly intentional. A patrol fleet encountered 3 vessels moving in coordinated formation until they suddenly broke apart, each ship jumping in a different direction without warning or apparent communication. Each report on its own was explainable. Together, they were inconvenient. The coalition reconvened a minor council, not an emergency session. Not yet. Unregistered actors are increasing in frequency, one analyst stated. Their origin is unknown, but their behavior is inconsistent with any recognized species. Pirates, a delegate suggested, not in the conventional sense. They engage, disengage, trade, explore. There is no consistent pattern. Then they are disorganized. The analyst hesitated. No, they said carefully. They are independent. The word lingered. Independent, not chaotic, not primitive, just unaligned. The first confirmed identification came 2 decades later. A deep space listening station intercepted a long-range transmission. Faint, distorted, but decipherable. It didn't match any known language, but it carried something familiar. Structure, improvisation layered over pattern. A linguistic model, long abandoned after the Earth isolation, was reactivated. The result took hours, then minutes, then seconds. When the translation stabilized, the room fell silent. If anyone receives this, avoid the red dwarf cluster coordinates. Unstable radiation, lost 2 ships, repeat, do not. Trading water recyclers for navigational data. Any port that can understand this. We are not alone out here. I don't care what they said, we are not alone. The signal didn't identify its origin. It didn't need to. Human, the analyst whispered. The room reacted immediately. That's impossible. Earth is contained. Containment protocols were not breached. No signals have originated from the Sol system in over a century. The analyst nodded slowly. This signal didn't come from Sol. Silence. Then where did it come from? The answer was obvious. No one wanted to say it. Elsewhere. The next council session was not minor. It was not calm. It was not unified. Reports flooded in from across coalition space. Encounters. Fragments. Stories. Always inconsistent. Always human. One system reported traders. Adaptable, cooperative, willing to exchange resources and information with alarming speed. Another reported aggressors. Ships that struck without warning. took what they needed, and vanished before retaliation could organize. A third described something stranger, a fleet that arrived not to conquer, not to trade, but to build. They established a functioning colony in record time, integrated local materials into unfamiliar technologies, and departed before any formal contact could be established. They don't behave like a single civilization, one delegate said. Because they aren't, another replied. That realization shifted everything. Humanity had not emerged into the galaxy as a unified presence. It had arrived as fragments, each carrying pieces of shared origin, but evolving independently, adapting to different environments, different pressures, different opportunities. Some preserved Earth's cultures. Others abandoned them. Some cooperated. Others competed. All of them adapted. They were supposed to stagnate, a senior member of the council said. They were supposed to be contained. They were? The response came from a quieter voice, an observer who had not yet spoken. They were contained in one place. The implications settled like gravity, and then we forced them to leave it. Data projections filled the chamber, estimated expansion vectors, encounter probabilities, technological divergence models. None of them were reassuring. Containment has failed, the Central Intelligence concluded. No one argued, because there was no argument left to make. A second line appeared beneath the first, generated not by emotion but by cold analysis. Adaptive capacity exceeds projection thresholds. Still, the coalition had options. Limited, uncertain, but present. We can re-establish contact, one delegate suggested. Reintegrate them under controlled conditions. Which ones? Another asked. There is no central authority. Then we establish one. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. You want to organize them? Someone said. After what we've seen, better organized and unpredictable. A transmission proposal was drafted, carefully worded, neutral in tone. An acknowledgement, not of error, but of reconsideration. It would be sent across broad-spectrum channels, designed to reach as many human vessels as possible. An invitation, or something close to it. Far from the chamber, far from the systems that still believe themselves to be the center of order, a human ship drifted between stars. It wasn't large. It wasn't advanced by any single standard. But it worked. That was enough. The crew detected the signal almost immediately. "Hey!" one of them called out. "You're going to want to see this." The captain stepped over, glancing at the decoded transmission as it stabilized on the screen. The language was familiar, structured, careful, polite, an echo of the message that had once sealed Earth's fate. "Is that—" someone began. "Yeah," the captain said. They read it once, slowly, then again, faster. "So," the pilot asked, "what do we do?" The captain leaned back, exhaling through a faint smile. "What do you think we do?" They reached forward and deleted it. "No reply," someone asked. The captain shook their head. They made their decision. They said, "We made ours." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Uncharted, unclaimed, unpromised. Humanity hadn't just survived exile. It had outgrown it. And somewhere, deep within the systems of the Galactic Coalition, a realization began to take hold. Not loud, not immediate, but undeniable. They hadn't removed a threat. They had released it.